anybody who hasn't met Kyle, this is Kyle Miller. He was our precision intern. His project for his internship was just gathering information on UAVs. What UAVs are a... Kyle,
I'll explain it. It's Unmanned Aerial Vehicle.
Drones.
Yeah, we try to stay away from that because they don't have guns when we use them in agriculture. So we try to use UAVs or UAS more.
So Kyle gathered information since everybody's talking about them, just so we have some unbiased information. Kyle?
Yep. Thanks for letting me be here today. For those that watched the other interns, I was in InfoAg with John, Shane, and Emily. And today I'll be talking about the use of UAVs in agriculture. I must stress first that this is not replacing crop scouts. Not saying that at all. This is just a great tool for crop scouts to use, especially in fields that you aren't sure about what you need to do. So basically, a background of unmanned aerial systems, UAVs or UASs. The FAA, the rules, 3 of them right now, really 4. You can't use them commercially. They are expected to have a decision by 2015, right around September. So we're just trying to gather information now, be able to figure out what we can and can't use. Must be under 55 pounds, 400 feet, and can't be within 3 miles of an airport. Those rules will stay past 2015. We're just commercial-wise, we don't know what is going to be able to be used. Right now, there's 2 different types of the aircraft, wings or copters. I believe that wings are superior based on the flight time and speed. You're going to be able to do more than 30 or 40 acres. And with a lot of the bigger fields, especially up in Tama County, with big farmers, that'll be much better. So as far as autonomous flight, pretty much that means that you're going to be able to set up the plane, let it launch, and you can scout during that time. You don't have to control your plane. So the telemetry from the computer will be able to tell the plane where to fly within the field, and UAS replies with the coordinates on where it's at, back to the computer. So there are multiple cameras or sensor types, and this is really the most important part of what you're getting back. If you're not getting back anything that's good or reliable, there's no point in flying it. So most of these are just a modified point-and-shoot camera. I have one right up here. The way they do it is they change the lens to create a sensor. The most used ones on UAVs are the RGB, red, green, blue. Those are the pretty standard camera. Near infrared, it all based on what wavelength you want to find. From there you can find the NDVI, normalized the different vegetation index. You may have heard about that. There's a picture down below on what you'll be using in NDVI scale 4. There's also 2 types of NDVI pictures, monochrome or palletized. I'm not going to go too far into that. There's also thermal sensors and LiDAR sensors. LiDAR is mainly only used for figuring out what stage of your crop you're at, because it can shoot through the crop canopy. Image stitching and post-image processing. Really, this is the bottleneck that we're finding. Images are taken every 2 seconds by the UAS, and the images are then stitched together using a computer and program. It takes a pretty beefy computer to be able to get these huge mosaics to create a field, and they can be over a gig or 2 gigs for just an 80 or 160 acre field. That's why this is such a bottleneck. Right now our goal is to be able to use the picture to create a prescription, whether it's nitrogen or if you're finding insects, pests out there, to be able to apply to a field. Here's 2 pictures of mosaics. The one on the left, at least my left, is one that I have done. Really, I've only used free programs. So this is Microsoft's, I forget what it's, panoramic maker. So you can't really trust that one. The field's not actually bent. This one is by a company called Agrobotics. I'm assuming there's around 300 pictures within this one picture. So this file is large, but with the post-image viewer, you can zoom in and see within the nearest inch of a field. So you're able to do population counts, and also with the different sensors, you can figure out how much nitrogen, what the pH is, and if there's any insects or any diseases out in that field. You can actually, with these sensors, find diseases a week before the naked eye can even tell. Here's a picture of one of the post-image processing. Be able to generate 3D maps, which would help to figure out what your crop stages is at. So the ideal picture that we want to have is create a flight plan for all the fields to be flown in one day. Send it off, whether you're at the office or wherever. You just be able to send it off, and it'll be able to take what you have gathering from the fields, put it back to your computer so you can send it out to the applicators. This would be for either if you want to make a planting prescription, nitrogen, herbicide, pesticide. That's also really helpful for the crop scouts out there. Then with a picture you can take from 300 feet, you're going to be able to tell where the low spots are a lot easier. And we also want to be able to spray within hours of being flown. I mean, you guys know how much fields change day to day. So how close are we to this ideal picture? Right now, a UAV on one battery life can fly over 1,000 acres, and right now we have to be within eyesight. They can go 10, 20 miles away, but rules right now is that the program won't let it go more than 2 miles away. With a self-built computer, you can process the images pretty fast. Right now it takes 160 acre field, takes about 6 hours to develop. That's going to be your sub-inch picture, and the prescriptions can be made within 1 day. The way that you'd want to make a prescription is you can import these into your computer. They don't have to be sub-inch if you're going to be making a nitrogen prescription, because it could be, sub 8 inches or a foot. And by limiting or making it limited to a foot rather than an inch, you're able to stitch these together in 45 minutes. Then you can use a slingshot or whatever you need to give the applicator to apply to the field. So the benefits to Growmark and New Century: you'll be able to have more precise applications. Now, I know that you guys like having the flat rate application, and it makes perfect sense, and we're not trying to limit the use of nitrogen necessarily because you guys are selling nitrogen. Well, maybe we'll limit it where it's not going to be as beneficial for us out in the field, but where the field is really thirsty, give it more nitrogen where it needs it. Also, it's going to be a lot better for a crop scout that you can use it. You have a picture there, you'll be able to see the whole field in great detail, so you can go out and determine what you need to do to the field in question. Also, it'll give a customer peace of mind. I believe that our applicators are very good compared to everybody else out there. So, yes, they might make a mistake or two within a couple of years, but really, it's going to be able to give the customer peace of mind. Some options for Growmark and New Century to take. Here's 3 companies that I have researched quite a bit. Agrobotics, I'll go to the next slide here. Pretty easy to see this graph. Right here, Agrobotics, it costs $7,000. That's leasing, so every year you get a new UAV with whatever they have figured out from the previous year, what needs to be done. So really, you're getting the most up-to-date. Now, the other ones cost a little bit more. I believe that SenseFly's EV is the best UAV, and they also have the best program. Now, these 2 companies will be able to get you your prescription 3 to 4 hours, so you can fly it that morning and have the prescription that afternoon. Now, to be able to fly, you're going to get a lot more acres with an EV, but with Agrobotics, you can, I think they give you 3 or 4 batteries, so you can charge on the go in your pickup. And there aren't too many fields around that are larger than 300 acres. There are some. Now, some of the other benefits: there are sales representatives in Iowa for SenseFly. Agrobotics is based out of Denver, Colorado, I think. And there also is a sales rep in Iowa for AgEagle. It's a little bit cheaper of a cost, but the technology is not quite all the way there for AgEagle. Now, are there any questions? Well, I want to thank you all for listening, and if you have any questions, you can ask me at any time.
What do those cameras cost?
Right now, I'll go back to the sensor types. The camera can cost anywhere from $800 up to, if you want to have, there are cameras that are called tetracams. You can have more than one sensor. They have one facing up to figure out what your light is, so it can modify what you're seeing down. Because if there's cloud movement, you're going to have a really messed up picture. It's going to be telling you lies, really. So the tetracam could cost anywhere from a 2 sensor would cost $2,000. I think they can make up to a 8 sensor, which really you only need about 3 or 4 sensors. That would be the absolute maximum. You could do it with 1 or 2. That would cost about $6,000. That camera does fit on any UAV.
You gotta buy the camera separate from the,
No, actually.
for those costs were what included the cameras on yours?
Yep. This one for $25,000. The program costs $9,000. That's why it's so high. The UAV only costs $10,000, and you get 2 cameras with it. You get to choose between your RGB, your I think they have thermal, and also your near infrared. And then to buy an additional one of those cameras is $900.
One of your slides had where you showed that you could, a machine could do 1,000 acres, but the computer can only process 160 acres in 6 hours.
If you want to do sub-inch accuracy, it would take about 6 hours to develop. Which you can do larger fields. I'm just trying to give you the representation on how long it takes per acre. There is this company in the middle. The way that they're able to get a prescription out to you is that you upload it to them, and they actually are continuously renting a supercomputer that can do these mosaics really fast.
What do you mean by a prescription?
Like here down here's a prescription from Agrobotics. If you'd want to, I don't exactly know what colors mean what, and I'm pretty sure this is a nitrogen application, but if you have heavy spots, I guess with blue, that you'd want to up it like 60 or 50 pounds nitrogen rather than having your purple zone being 40. Or also if you find a weed out in the field, just by what wavelength that the weed is coming back up to you. If it's heavier in spots and lighter in some, you can apply more herbicide.
You had said that you can understand what might be going on in the field over a week before. You might be able to see it with your eye.
Mm-hmm.
How is that
Possible.
Yeah.
Right now, with the cameras, you're shooting between 500 and 700 nanometers for your wavelength, and that's actually shooting within your plant. So you can figure out how green it is, or if there is some sort of disease, it'll be showing not quite the right green that you'd want. To be able to use an index calculator within a program, you're able to determine if you have, sudden death. You'd be able to determine a week before. I don't know what you necessarily do with finding that earlier, but any other diseases you're actually be able to tell in that way.
How do they do in the rain?
This one right here, this one is rated up to 30. This one is actually, it has RTK on it, so it'll be able to georeference within the inch and fly in 30-mile-an-hour winds and light rain. I don't know why you'd want to do it in light rain, but you can. I mean, when I went and saw this one, it was February and it was 25-mile-an-hour wind. So one way it was doing about 40 mile an hour, one way it's doing 15, but it still was able to stitch a really good picture. Yeah, the larger insects are going to be obviously easier. The smaller ones, that's where I really want to do some research. So it's really hard to think about that you'd be able to find your soybean aphid because they're so tiny. But when you think about soybean aphids, what do they produce? I mean, they eat, and then they produce that black, sugary substance.
Shit.
Yeah.
Honey, yeah.
Well, cellulose and sugar shows up at a certain wavelength, and if you can narrow down to that wavelength, you're going to be able to find where in certain fields you're going to have more of the soybean aphid.
So how do you know when you get one of these images back, you see all kinds of different colors in the field?
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking at a nitrogen? Are we looking at weed? Are we looking at disease? Are we looking at insects? Are we looking at a combination of
Right.
two or more of them?
That's a really good question because we don't exactly know what we're seeing out there. What?
I don't ask bad questions.
You don't exactly know what you're seeing out there, but when you put a corn plant and you put any other type of weed beside it, that sensor will be able to detect based on how green it is and what wavelength, which I'm really using the word wavelength a lot. But with the program, you can, I could really show it to you sometime on a website, that they're able to detect the different wavelengths that it's coming up, and you can see the difference between two plants. Right now they're creating they're gathering a bunch of data to be able to figure out, okay, corn is this wavelength, soybeans are this wavelength, this is what weed's getting. I mean, and then everything else, they're finding out what wavelength different weeds are.
What's the current FAA?
It has to be, money is changing hands. There are companies out there that are using it, they're flying for free and putting it in their upping their crop scouting, which, as long as those companies aren't having horrendous accidents that are, hurting somebody or killing somebody, the FAA hasn't been going after them. I know about 3 companies that are doing that right now, but I really want to wait until see what the FAA has to say.
You might want to double check that. We do have a rule every 2 weeks.
Uh,
Farmer's allowed to go up and look at his vegetable garden, and that's fine, but flies over his stone field, that's a commercial operation.
If it's, his own, it's been so gray. I mean, I personally know there's a kid that graduated a year before me in high school that he is out there flying it commercially, and the FAA hasn't been approaching. It's called Farm Intelligence or Wing Scan. Really, it all depends on location. When you're out here in Iowa, when it's up there, it looks like a small bird. I mean, you can hardly tell, but we really want to wait and see what they have to say.
So what are they charging per acre, you know?
Yeah, I have a list. This is what Wingscan is charging right now. I think I have it. I can just start sending papers around if you guys want to look at them, but
Know if we have time for this week.
there's the pricing that Wingscan has. The other one is the AgRobotics program, where you can either lease it or buy your UAV and what it can do for you.
Who's Wingscan? Is this the guy you were talking about?
Yep. It's a company that my friend has partnered with them. Wingskin is based out of Mankato, Minnesota. They were at multiple conferences I've been at.
Not a real cheap program.
No, which, with what they're finding, they're not able to get anything back to the customer within 5 days. Right now, it's a bunch of farmers that want pretty pictures, and I want to stay way away from that. I want to be able to, if the farmer wants to be able to come this day, you go out there, you press a button, and you crop scout while it's going on, and you're able to say, okay, this is what needs to happen 3 hours from now.
Really good job, Patty. Other questions?
You load the coordinates of the field that you want to take pictures of. Is that how it finds it, or how it actually find the field?
Well, on the pre-flight plan, it comes up with a Google Earth type thing that you highlight. You just make your square, or you make your, whatever pattern is around the field. It takes 2 or 3 minutes, and then from there it'll make a flight plan that goes back and forth throughout the field. So as long as you drive up to the right field and you're flying the right field, that'll be right. If you're flying the wrong field, gotta be careful.
Well, the day they legalized marijuana. You're all right.
How much room did the thing need? Because it's a plane to take off and
Might
land.
be the new cash cow.
Yep.
Oh, it could be.
If you look up SenseFly's EV,
So, see,
it's this big, and you shake it 3 times, the propeller spins up, and you let it
be a
go.
member's millions go
And I
on
mean,
that
you don't even need a catapult. It's not launched off your pickup at all. And when it comes down and lands, it's so, the RTK is so precise that you can stand here and it'll come down at a pretty sharp angle, come about 5 feet off the ground or less. The propeller will spin backwards, so it hovers here for about a second, and then it shuts off.
Just falls.
Yeah, which, as long as you're not out there on Highway 63 and it drops. I mean, if you're out in soybeans or
Sure,
the
it's just gonna land
grass,
on top of that
yeah,
grass or something.
and it has carbon fiber underneath it, just little strips. So I've seen them take some pretty hard landings, but as long as you somewhat know what you're doing, it's not that hard.
Really good job, Kyle.